Alright, check this out. We're going to replace some upper control arms on this Ram 1500. This is a 2020, so it's going to work from ranges 19 through 24. This vehicle does have a lift kit. The only difference is the knuckle looks a little bit different where the nut attaches, but the procedure is going to be the same. Now we are replacing these because the upper ball joints were bad. There was some play there. The tolerance for the upper ball joints is 1 millimeter, which is not very much. If you see a significant amount, chances are you need to replace those control arms because of the ball joints. Obviously, you're going to have to take the wheels off and support the vehicle. You don't need to support anything under the control arms at this point. We're going to use a 21 millimeter socket, loosen up this nut. We're not going to take it off completely, but just loosen it just to the point where there's a few threads on it so that we can break it free from the knuckle safely so it doesn't just pop out at us. I'm using a pickle fork. I like to use a pickle fork, but there is other tools you can use. In worst case, you could give the knuckle a tap with a hammer and hopefully that loosens it up. Before I take the nut off, I am going to put a tie strap around the knuckle and around the spring. It's going to prevent the knuckle from coming out too far. You don't want to ruin the axle, but you also don't want to mess up the brake hose if that has too much tension on it. So just using a pry bar, pry it down, then you can take the nut off. Now we're going to take the upper control arm bolts out. There is a keyway on the nut itself, or a bracket that prevents the nut from spinning. You want to be careful with that. If the bracket spins, there is some wires or even the brake line that's near. You might have to use a wrench on one side. I used a 21 millimeter wrench and a 21 millimeter socket to take those bolts out. So just watch out for that keyway. I didn't have to do it on the front side of the passenger side, but the back side, I definitely did. I didn't want anything to break there, so use a wrench. Just to give you a heads up, there's a lot of Ram installation videos that I've made, so definitely check those out. Make sure you subscribe, that's gonna help me out. That out, and the arm comes right out. All right, check this one out. This is nice, this is solid metal. TTX. That's stuff. All right, for tightening it, it's not going to mess up that wire right there. So we're going to torque that at the end. Pry this down. Get the nut started. We can take that strap off out of the way. So the nut is 26 foot-pounds and then an additional 180 degrees. Alright, that's 26. I'll go 180 degrees, which do the best you can, but what I like to do is go 90 degrees and then 90 degrees, or you can make a line on the socket. So that would be 90 degrees, and that would go an additional 90 degrees. We got to get the cotter pin lined up, so we're going to go a little more. Holes lined up. If you have to make it a little tighter. You never want to loosen it to make it line up. Take the cotter pin, stick that in. Alright, that looks good. And then we have a grease fitting too. Pop that off. Get the little grease fitting here. Get that started on there. I'll tighten it down with a wrench. And then put a couple pumps of grease in there. Okay, so now that we want to torque these other two bolts, I'm going to use a floor jack and just raise up underneath the lower control arm just to get this close to ride height, and then we'll tighten those down. Okay, it's close to ride height. Now we can torque those down. And we'll torque these to 128 foot-pounds. And after you're done this job, you want to go have an alignment done. You don't want to burn those front tires out after you just tightened up the front end. That's good.